After 50, I realized that many of the habits I'd carried for decades were quietly stealing my life. Some seemed harmless, others I defended as essential, but all of them were stopping me from living better. And only when I had the courage to finally let them go, everything began to change. Today I want to share these 5 habits because maybe they're weighing on your life too, and you haven't even noticed yet. Like and subscribe to the channel, because here we talk about what almost no one talks about. And there's always time to start again. For a big part of my life, I kept stacking myself up, one role on top of another, one expectation over another, one obligation leaning against the next. And on the outside, I smiled. After all, I was building my life. But time passes, and after 50, I began to feel something that has no name, but weighs on the body. It's as if I were carrying heavy bags, walking through life, without ever stopping to ask, why am I carrying all this? Anyway, it's strange to admit that we've sabotaged ourselves, that many of our habits, which once seemed certain, were actually traps. I'm not talking about big addictions or dramatic decisions. I'm talking about quiet choices, things we do without noticing, but that keep draining us in installments, every single day. And the worst part, most of these things we learned when we were young, and we kept repeating, until they became part of who we are, or who we thought we were. But after 50, the soul asks for revision. The outside noise no longer works as an excuse. The emptiness becomes clearer. The questions hit harder. And it was during this time that I started looking inward, not as someone judging themselves, but as someone who finally had the courage to see themselves. What I'm going to share with you here isn't a list of commandments. It's not a manual for becoming a better person. It's an intimate map, from someone who let go of what hurt, to live what still remains. If you've already passed 50, you'll understand. If you're not there yet, maybe this video will be an early gift, because no one should only discover these things when time no longer comes back. And the first habit I let go of hurt more than I imagined, but it was also the one that freed me the most. For years, my life was shaped by other people's eyes. I sat at tables that didn't welcome me. I smiled when I wanted to cry. I accepted invitations that drained me just to seem present. I spent so much time trying to be someone who pleased others that I almost forgot who I was when no one was watching. Little by little, I realized that living for approval was like building a house with windows facing outwards, but no door leading in. And it started early. When I swallowed words so I wouldn't seem difficult. When I dressed to be praised, not to feel good. When I said yes with my lips, but screamed no on the inside. At first, being accepted felt vital. Recognition seemed like love, and I chased it like air. The problem is, in that process, I kept leaving pieces of myself behind. Pieces I miss today, but that I no longer want to ignore. After 50, I realized something that paralyzed me for days. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore, and yet I was still seeking it. It was like an old echo, an invisible habit, until one day I asked myself, what if no one understands? What if they judge me? What if I disappoint them? And the answer came in a calm silence, almost maternal. That's okay. It's okay to be misunderstood. It's okay not to please everyone. It's okay not to fit into the boxes they built for me. When I stopped caring so much, I discovered a freedom I'd never had. It was like taking off a tight outfit after years of thinking it was part of my skin. Today, I'm still kind, but no longer endlessly available. I still listen, but I also set boundaries. And above all, I keep choosing myself, even if it costs me sideways glances. Because pleasing the whole world is easy. The hard part is looking in the mirror and saying, I belong to myself. Do you still live trying to prove something to someone? For much of my life, I believed that having a lot was the same as being safe, as if surrounding myself with objects could somehow build an armor against fear, against emptiness, against the feeling that something was always missing. My house filled up with furniture, clothes, keepsakes, papers, collections I couldn't even remember why I started. There was something suffocating in it, but I didn't yet have the courage to admit it. With every new item stored, It felt like I was preparing for an uncertain future, and at the same time, moving further away from the present. It's curious to notice how we don't just hoard things, but old versions of ourselves. Clothes that no longer fit, books we'll never read again, broken objects waiting for a repair that never comes. All of this takes up not only physical space, but mental space too. After 50, I started listening more closely to the silence in my home. And in that silence, I realized there was more than just echoes. There was excess. There was weight. One day, without any big plan, I started opening boxes, one by one. Some held objects. Others held difficult memories. And each time I let something go, I felt a relief that didn't come from outside, but from within. It wasn't just a cleanup. It was a kind of farewell, a way of saying, I'm not this anymore, and that's okay. Each thing I gave up opened space for a real experience. And I'm not talking only about shelf space, but space in my heart. Today, my home is lighter, and so am I. Because when we stop hoarding things, we start collecting moments. The ones that truly matter. Are you still holding on to things that no longer belong in your life? For decades, work was my surname. It was where I felt I existed. It gave me pride, recognition, a sense of worth. I confused productivity with self-love, a full diary with happiness, targets achieved with fulfillment. And for a long time, it seemed to work. But there was a silent debt building up, a bill that wasn't about money. It was about time, hours I didn't live, people I didn't watch grow, moments I traded for a glowing screen or yet another meeting. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that I'd make up for it later, that it all had a purpose. But later never came. And one day, already past 50, I sat on the sofa in my own home and felt a strange emptiness. I was finally there, with time on my hands, but it felt like I didn't know what to do with it anymore, as if I'd forgotten who I was outside of my profession. That's when a phrase cut through me like a fine, painful thread. No promotion is worth more than a hug missed or a day of peace. And so, I started stepping back, reviewing, refusing invitations that pulled me away from myself, saying no to tasks that drained more than they gave. I discovered that the world keeps turning, even when you stop. And that work can be honorable, meaningful, necessary, but it cannot hijack your life. Because the time we trade for external recognition sometimes costs us internal recognition. And once that's lost, it takes time to be found again. Today, I still work. But now, what defines me is no longer what I produce. It's who I am when no one is watching. Work gives meaning, but it cannot be the only meaning. Do you feel like you've spent too long running and forgotten where you were going? For a long time, I was afraid of silence. I thought that if the world around me went too quiet, the noise inside would become unbearable. So I filled it. Music always playing, TV on with no one watching, endless commitments, too many voices, a constant dance so I wouldn't have to stop. And deep down, I knew. It wasn't distraction, it was escape, because silence reveals. It points out the cracks we try to cover with movement. It brings up questions with no quick answers. It opens drawers in the soul that have been locked for years. And for a long time, I wasn't ready to face those drawers. But after 50, the noise started to tire me out. Empty conversations began to hurt. Parties without meaning left me drained. And slowly, I began letting the noise fade away. At first, silence scared me. It felt like emptiness. But soon, I realized it wasn't absence. It was presence. Presence of me with myself. I began having coffee in silence, walking without headphones, sitting on the veranda without needing to talk. And in those moments, I heard voices that didn't come from outside, but from the things I'd silenced for so long. The silence I once avoided became my cure. Today, it embraces me. It brings me back to center. It reminds me that I can exist, even when no one applauds me, even when no one calls me. If you've been avoiding silence, maybe it's not because it hurts, but because it reveals. What is it that you're still not ready to hear from yourself? We spend much of life thinking we have time. Time to apologize, time to try again. Time to take care of ourselves, to say, I love you, to take that trip, to fulfill that old dream we left tucked away in a drawer of youth. And that's how we keep postponing. We postpone important conversations, simple desires, small acts of courage, as if life were an endless road with countless chances to turn back. But after 50, time changes its scent. It starts to taste like urgency. It stops being a promise and becomes reality. It no longer presents itself as one day, but as today. And that's frightening, because suddenly, everything we postponed shows up in front of us and demands its place. The penny dropped for me on an ordinary day. I was tidying up a drawer and found an old letter I never had the courage to send. And I asked myself, who else am I waiting for the right moment with, when maybe it will never come? The truth is, time doesn't tell us when it's going to leave our side. So what I haven't lived, I might never live. And what I still can live needs space now. When I stopped postponing, I finally began living. Today, I make calls without a reason. I say what I feel more honestly. I find time for what nourishes me, because I discovered that life won't wait for me to finish all my tasks before it starts. It's already happened. And you? What are you still leaving for later, thinking you'll have time, when in reality, the time is now? After 50, I started walking slower, not because my body weakened, but because I finally understood that rushing pulled me away from myself. At that slower pace, I began noticing how many habits I carried without realizing. They didn't shout, they didn't demand, they didn't visibly hurt, but they emptied me out, bit by bit, every day. Looking back now, I can name the 5 that marked me most. Caring too much about other people's opinions was the first chain I broke, and in the silence that followed, I discovered who I really was. Hoarding things I didn't need made me feel safe, until I realized that lightness lives in what we let go. Putting work above life made me feel important on the outside, but absent on the inside. It took me a long time to understand that time never comes back. Running from silence seemed to protect me, but it was there that I found the answers I'd searched for in others for years. And living as if there were infinite time was the greatest mistake. Only when I embraced finitude, I began to truly live. Letting go of these habits wasn't easy. They were old, familiar, almost comfortable. But releasing each one was like reclaiming a part of myself I'd left forgotten along the way. After 50, life doesn't demand speed anymore. It demands courage. Courage to look within. Courage to choose what stays. Courage to let go of what no longer serves. And maybe that's the greatest gift of this stage. Understanding that it's not about accumulating. It's about freeing. About living what there's still time to live. Without rushing, but with truth. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these habits have you already managed to let go of? Or which one still lives in you, silently, but waiting to be released? Leave it in the comments, because maybe what you're living through today is exactly what someone out there also needs to hear. And if this video made sense to you, if some word found a place in your chest, don't let this moment pass. In the next video, I'll share the things I most regret not having done before 60. Because sometimes life teaches late, but still in time. You still have time to speak, to change, to live. I'll be here whenever you want to come back.